Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Kennedy,
Here.
Alderman Moore, Alderman French,
Present.
Alderman Vaquero, Alderman Howard, Alderman Carter, Alderman Murphy, Alderman Ogilvy, Chairman Conway.
Present.
We have 5 present, we have a quorum.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. E&A sent back, and there's a summary page, and I think I'll have Mr. Payne walk us through the summary page.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, members. Good morning, members of the committee. What you have before you is a response from Ways and Means Committee regarding the request for changes to the budget as proposed. And I'll be working off this summary page, but all the detailed exhibits are behind it. Okay, so if you have any questions about the details. Basically, in a nutshell, what E&A tried to do was try to be responsive to all your requests, but it was prorating some of the increases because it was necessary to keep a balance. And you can see, I'll go through each of these items individually. In item number 1, in the Recreation Division, there was allocated a total of $156,427 increase. That would fund a recreation supervisor position as well as increase per performance and training. Item number 2, in the Forestry Division, a total of $188,000 would be added to add contractual services for weed cutting. Item 3, the Circuit Attorney, that would add an Attorney 3 position, but it also reduces a Public Information Officer to 6 months. So it's basically reducing that position, funding it for half a year, and then adding that one Attorney 3 position. That was a $40,757 increase. Item 4, the sheriff for the personnel schedule change. This committee had already made a reduction, but this actually changes the TO. So that's not a change in the budget, but it was a change in the TO. Item number 5, election and registration per performance election costs. That increase was $80,889. On items 6 and 7, 340 for the treasurer's office. This was the request to restore the Ways and Means cuts to that office of $171,400 on the general fund side, as well as $171,400 to the Office of Financial Empowerment. Item 8, Communications Division. This was, again, a prorated increase, adding per performance funds for $22,607. Now, there were some other proposed changes. Most of these are technical in nature, and they basically are not impactful on the budget. In the Traffic Division, we're moving a CAD tech position from Traffic Division to the ITSA Department 127. In City Council, there was a personnel change. Again, no dollar impact there. The Health Department had a number of personnel changes. One was a move of a clerk typist from Division 719 to Division 711. That was nothing there in terms of budget impact. And they also had some grant fund personnel changes as well. The personnel had reclassified some positions in the meantime. Item 13, this is a grant fund. CREA had some rollover funds which they were appropriate. It was over $200,000 that they were appropriating, but they were appropriated all at once. And given that there was a position funded, that didn't make sense. If you spend it, then what do you do after the end of the year 1? Then you'd have to lay out the person. So they reduced that budget accordingly and spread it out over 3 years, and that's why you have a reduction in the CREA of that grant, that particular grant of rollover funds. Item 14 is the detail for the Parks Fund, the capital funds, the Ward capital funds, and the Neighborhood Parks Fund for Metro Parks. And we appropriate the dollar amount, but as you received it, it was just a dollar amount. It didn't have all the detail. And as you know, as aldermen, you determine where the ward accounts were, and then the Parks Committee identified what the details for the wards were. And finally, okay, well, let me go through the numbers. And then, so you had your Ways and Means reductions below. So that was $637,473 increases, offsetting the $260,080 for the decreases. And then on the revenue side, we've bumped the revenue from the parking meter fund to $1 million from the $600,000, which was in the estimate. And then, of course, the sheriff's office reduction was $88,000. But then the communications fund transfer, that actually declines $22,000 because that's whatever's left over in the communication fund comes in general revenue. So that reduction is $22,000. So with the increase of 637, the decline of the 260, and the additional revenue of 377, that balances out the general fund. And you can see across the board how they all balance out with the reduction in the grant funds as an exception. Item number 15 is just a language change. And what it does basically is saying, one of the things that we've been struggling with in recent years is trying to get our fund balance back up. Currently, we have a policy where 1/2 of any operating surplus in any previous fiscal year goes to capital and 1/2 stays with the fund balance, which is actually a pretty good policy. It's one-time funds and all. But in order to, one of the things that rating agencies have been hitting us on is our reserves. Our reserves are still not where we want them to be. So what we're proposing is to suspend that allocation to capital of that half of any operating surplus, if it exists, until we get back to where we want to be, which is 5% of the general fund balance, unreserved general fund balance of 5% of the budget. So that's what that wording would accomplish. And that's what E&A took up on Wednesday.
All right, so on our proposed increases, they basically funded about 62%.
Yeah, closer to 65, something like that. It was just, it was whatever reduction it took to keep it balanced.
And then on reserve, I know that, our city reserves, are light,
Right.
but, much was made as to the treasurer's office's reserve. Have they ever calculated what they actually need?
I have not heard from them on that.
And all I know is that they, somehow the mayor's office was gonna get $2 million from their reserve. So obviously they have $2 million extra in reserve at a minimum. I just think it would be prudent to know that. And that's why we kind of have a bit of an issue with the treasurer's office is, again, they raised the parking meter fees 50%, and they raised the fines 50%, and we're getting no more money. And, I know that's not your problem, Paul, but that's what we're trying to attempt to do, is to get them to fund those positions they added out of their other funds that they have available that we can't access. And I think that was the goal of the committee here. This is a blue plate special, ladies and gentlemen, so, anybody else got questions, we'll take questions, but what I'd like to do is move this out to be second read today so that there's plenty of time to get the budget passed between now and the end of the year. Alderman Kennedy.
No questions. Thank you.
Alderman French.
Yeah, a couple questions here. So first, with the increase in revenue, so we're increasing the estimated amount that the treasurer's office will transfer to the general fund from around 600,000 to 1 million. That's an increase of $400,000. Almost an 80% increase there. Well, close to it. What is that? Did you do that, or is that something that the treasurer's office conceded that they are going to put more money in?
That's simply our estimate. No, so if the question is that guaranteed amount? No, it's not. The thinking was that this year we should be getting close to $1 million. We know what that is in this current fiscal year. So is it reasonable to expect that given, again, as the chair mentioned, there were rate increases and such, that you'd be getting $1 million this year? Should you be getting $1 million this year? Sure, that would be a reasonable estimate to assume. But again, that's not guaranteed, but it's a reasonable estimate. And so that's what's going to be included as our revenue estimate.
One of the issues was that that it really became clear that the net income of the treasurer's office is being severely underestimated, and I think it's better if we do have a more accurate number, and that way at least the treasurer's office looks like a balanced budget. So if you increase that to $1 million, the amount that she's still requesting from general revenue is still in the area of 750. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Am I right?
Out of the 1010 account.
You're talking about the treasurer's office budget?
Yes.
Correct. Out of the 1010.
Yes, 738, right.
Okay, so with the new estimate of $1 million, it goes from being about 150,000 in the hole to about 250,000
I mean, if you are comparing what we are receiving from parking meters compared to her general fund treasurer's office function, yes.
Okay. Well, that looks better. And as far as the additions that we made, I'm trying to, so these are the new numbers, but, our numbers that we had recommended on this sheet.
I do have that, I think, yes.
Here.
He has it.
I've got those,
Oh.
I've got those old. Whenever the-
Yeah, I actually do have that. Okay, if you want me to just go through them.
Sure. So we had recommended how much to the recreation
The
division?
recreation was 241,
241, and now it's been dropped to 150.
156,
Forestry, we recommended,
290, and you
okay.
end up 188.
All right.
Board of Elections was 125, and you ended up with 80.
80. What about circuit attorney?
And Circuit Attorney was 95 and ended up with 40. But that was a different, it was offset by that half-year position reduction.
Okay.
So what he's saying is he gave us 65 cents on the dollar.
Right. And the same thing with the Communications Division, that's 22,000,
Versus how much?
34.5.
Okay. So for instance, with the Board of Elections, they had requested much more than that, but we had settled on 125. I think they had requested 300 or something like that.
Yeah, the original was, yeah, significantly.
Based upon expected turnout and the numbers of elections they would have in this fiscal year. I mean, 80 is more than they had been budgeted. Is that really enough? I don't know. I guess we'll see on election night. Communication division, the number we requested was about 34,000, and that was going to get them whole to where their budget was in this fiscal year. So by going less than that, we're still effectively cutting their budget from this current fiscal year. So, and the circuit attorney, the 40,000 will pay for what?
That is the difference between adding that new Attorney 3 position in whole,
Mm-hmm.
and then the reducing the Public Information Officer for half a year.
Okay. Okay, so they will be able to hire that attorney position?
Yes,
And nothing else? Because they had
Right.
requested. I
they
think,
had
several.
requested 2, I believe.
And some overtime, I think they had requested too. Okay, so they'll just be able to hire one new attorney. All right. Okay, that's all the questions I had, particularly on that. Mr. Chairman, there were some changes that were recommended to our budget for the Board of Aldermen, for the Personnel Committee related to Secretary of Pay and a couple of new positions that we're funding. Are we gonna be able to address those?
The, yeah, I'll address it quickly here. We have 2 positions that have to be filled, and I think one will get filled faster than the other, Mr. Clark.
We hope to have a vote today on filling the one,
Okay.
Which one? Which one?
legal analyst.
Okay. And then the other position won't be filled as fast, and since those funds are in salary, we'll reallocate to accommodate equalization on the professional staff. And
So is that something that needs to be done in this
No.
bill, or we're gonna do it on E&A later?
the transfer, since it's in salaries for the Board of Aldermen, and correct me if I'm wrong, Paul, but we can transfer
Well, if you're.
without even going to E&A.
If you are spending within your salary account and you remain within that total allocation, yeah, you can, how you allocate it among your personnel, that's up to you. That, as long as you're not changing the total appropriation.
So are we sure that math works out? Because, we haven't hired a financial analyst yet. We talked about increasing the possible pay to be able to reach and get a more favorable candidate. Even if we hire them later in the fiscal year, is that math gonna work out and still be able to pay for the secretaries?
Yeah, and Tom Shepard popped in and then he popped out in the last couple seconds, so we'll take that up with him.
Okay. All right, that's all that gets done.
Alderman Vaccaro.
Just one question. So I know they changed the table of organization for the sheriff's department, and it's still my understanding, even when I talked over there, that the judges set the table of organization. And I don't know that we can do this, but I guess we'll find out. But my understanding from them is you can't cut, that's what they set that table of organization. They had already cut back 6 sheriff positions to start with, and they made it clear when I, because I'm curious, obviously I'm curious, that we can't start, if not, then I guess we can start cutting more of their table of organizations.
I would say historically, it's been a gray area. We have reduced their table organization before. Obviously, if there was something of a security issue that they perceived, they would let us know that, I believe. And they would, I think. So I think where you're at is that if there was something on to where they think they're impeding security, the judges would probably let you know.
Yeah, I'm just going by what I was told, when I checked it out. They said they set that and we're not supposed to. But I was more curious, but that was my only question.
Alderman Carter.
I just have one question for the recreation division. When we spoke about adding this in, I thought that we talked about doing some special contracting as well, didn't we? I thought we did, and I think that Todd mentioned that he was extremely supportive of our efforts, but I don't see that in there. So
Well, the funding is going to the Recreation Department. When they put together the package between now and next Friday, I'll have Todd talk to you.
okay, yeah, because I mean, one of the reasons why was that we wanted to make sure that it touched areas that weren't getting served. Like I spoke about my area and pieces of, the second ward and the
Eighth
first.
Ward too.
Yeah, and the eighth ward, they can get some, some special things going, so.
Well, get anything going.
Yeah,
I could address it. This way they allocated the recreation division was per performance, an actual position, and then some fringes.
program.
Right.
Okay.
This was how the director of operations submitted it specifically. I think when we had the last meeting, he said, submit what you believe would be the best way of allocating the funds, and that was what he submitted to me in order to put this together. He said that would be the way they would do it, that one, and then forestry would be the contractual piece.
Okay.
So that's how he recommended it.
All right.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I do have one proposed amendment. It is not financial and would not, I believe, require going back to E&A. We can still second read it today. It's related to the asset forfeiture fund.
Okay.
Alderman Carter, would you pass those?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Hold on.
One of my residents is taking this, we need to stop signing.
I'm not sure what amendment number this would be. What number are we on?
Why don't we call it B1?
B1? Okay.
We have another meeting, we'll call it, start at C1. Does that make sense?
That's nice. So this amendment would simply state that the asset forfeiture fund, which over the last 3 years have now totaled about $3.9 million, and under current procedure is basically allocated at the whim of the police chief, that this would require that it would be approved, the budget would be approved by the Public Safety Committee before those funds are allocated. This year it totals about $630,000. In previous years, it was up to $2 million.
All right. Paul, on the asset forfeiture money with the police department, what do they do with that? I mean, how does it work into their budget?
Right now, as you see in the line item budget, you have a budget of about $600,000, and it's allocated.
So it's a helicopter.
Let me get there. Let me get that page. If you look at page 257 of your line item detail, you can see it had been a higher amount. In FY15, they'd spent $2.1 million. But since then, money's coming into asset forfeiture have been significantly reduced. Next year's allocation is $629,000, and they have it allocated to various line items. For instance, $104,000 of public health and safety supplies, $104,000 to public health and safety equipment, and it's just uses those general categories within there, like capital assets, $314,000 and such. So they should be spending within those guidelines. Now, I don't know if you need more specific guidelines, if that's what you're looking for, but that's how they would have to spend it within the regular budget. Prior to local control, there was this asset forfeiture was not part of the budget, but since then, it has been included in this budget document, and it is appropriated each year.
And it's appropriated to those categories.
Yes.
To those very broad categories. And prior to local control, there was much more oversight from the police board. With local control, there's basically become this accountability gap. There isn't very much
We
oversight.
went to local control to have accountability.
Yes, there isn't. So there are very broad categories there. So public health and safety, $300,000. In FY15, almost $800,000 was spent in land and buildings. So I think there needs to be a little bit more oversight to that.
Well, we approve the budget every year, and it is in the budget, it is on the line items.
What is public health and safety?
Well, the chief was in here, I don't know that we asked him that specific question of where he was going with it, but, just my opinion, first of all, this is the Ways and Means Committee, we approved that budget. The expenditure of money shouldn't go to public safety, it should come to Ways and Means. The other thing is, with respect to the city's budget, the police department, which is part of the city's budget now, they need whatever they need to operate. How they get the money, whether we allocate because it comes into a special fund, the asset forfeiture. I'm sure, even if we said no, then they'll just have to reduce manpower on the street, if some of these are important to their operations. But I assume,
The money still may go exactly where he intends it to go, but we'll know at least where it goes. I mean, as Ways and Means Chair, do you know where the $314,000 is going for public health and safety?
just as much as you, and you had the opportunity to ask the chief.
And there wasn't a good answer from the chief.
Well, no, yeah, we did ask him.
We have asked him.
I asked him, and he said, we asked him here, and he spoke about maintenance to a helicopter, and I forget what the other thing was, but a majority of the money was going towards the helicopter, which I think right now is, I don't know.
I mean, close to $1 million over the last 3 years, I think, has been spent just on upgrades to his office and building. And I don't think that's acceptable.
And that's fine with me. Since the Ways and Means already approves the budget, I would think this is redundant, but I couldn't support this unless it designates the Ways and Means Committee, because then we'll just end up approving it twice.
Okay, so you would prefer if it said Ways and Means Committee as opposed to Public
Well,
Safety?
we are the committee that's supposed to spend the money and approve the
Public Safety
expenditure.
Committee is also the one that's supposed to provide oversight for the police department.
That's different than spending money.
It's the ultimate oversight.
Right, so should we have a separate meeting specifically for?
Well, you can bring this out to the floor, or we could,
So I can just vote the amendment here. Would you prefer Public Safety or Ways and Means?
For that review? Public safety.
I support Public Safety. You support Public Safety?
Sure.
All right.
I'm on both.
All right.
So no matter, right?
You know,
You gonna vote?
And I'm good either way, to be honest with you. I agree with Steve on it, you know.
Well, I mean, I just think that,
I think you got the votes.
I mean, when you listen to the chief speak, he don't just talk about one specific thing. He talk about programming. We need more of this and more of that, and we have had we have had many opportunities where we could fund some of those things with the asset forfeiture money. So,
Well, I guess, Paul, I have a question. So if it went to public safety, but it's funded through Ways and Means or the budget, does public safety even have any input in that, other than possibly, since it's funded into those categories, being able to argue that, you know, I mean, we couldn't deflect the funding in any direction. In other words, it's still gonna be, I guess what I'm asking, what public safety, what their ability to actually do anything. Yeah, I guess I'm mixed.
I think it would work just like the Prop S funds. So Ways and Means allocates the funds in our budget towards that category, but then the specific expenditures are approved by Public Safety Committee.
I would say operationally, however, you want to be careful to where if there's something that needs to be spent on a timely way, you don't want to have, some, oh, well, we're not in session and we're not meeting, and so you've got something that, as the chair may have said, is operationally necessary, that it's being held up because the timing of the meeting is not conducive to getting it approved.
That resolution can be passed at the same time as the budget process is going on.
That's one of the things you want to be sure of.
Well, then, if that, we would then, let's add the wording, the Public Safety Committee shall complete its by June 30th. Or, you know, the same burden that we're under, I have to do this budget by June 30th. If the Public Safety Committee doesn't approve by the June 30th, then the budget is submitted, it is the budget. Because we have to have a budget by June 30th. That's what my requirement is. And we can't drag it out for 6 months, so we'll put if you want it in public safety, it has to be done by June 30th.
I would think.
So, I mean, but that would mean that this budget would have to be submitted and approved in just a few days.
No, because we're gonna approve it by category, you know, just when it comes to us as Board Bill number 1.
But
The
I'm saying
budget
is
year
that-
starts July 1st.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that if we include that specific date, then that would mean that the $630,000 for this fiscal year would have to be approved by the Public Safety Committee within the next 13 days.
When?
I think we bring the chief in, I mean, he have a couple of meetings.
we could, it's up to
I mean,
Secretary,
I'm
it's
up to
the-
whatever meetings you guys want, so,
Monday, Tuesday, we pull them in.
you know.
I don't know if the date is necessary.
Mr. Chairman? may I-
Yes, sir.
So, I mean, the goal here is to provide better oversight for the police department. That's where you're trying to hit in their expenditures and uses of, not just the funds, but overall that, you know, since local control, has been really an overall question. How do we maintain control of this, the police department, how you really get hold of it? And so then, I see this is just one effort in that direction. Now, the way I read it, if you're saying that, this says that it needs the approval before it's spent, not necessarily the approval before it's allocated. And so the process of the budget is completed before the monies are spent, certainly. But it doesn't mean that the two processes have to be congruent. I don't see it. That they have to both be running at the same time and end at the same date. I don't see that.
Can I offer this is a question for Paul again, but what Paul brought up, I guess I'm concerned about is if we're on summer break and something comes up where the chief feels that the money has to be spent on something, but yet we're on summer break, how does he do that unless we somehow call emergency meetings in the middle of break? And so the budget's approved July 1st, and about a week after that, we go out. And then we're out until, we don't come back until mid-September, I believe it is. I guess my concern is if they have something that would come up where this money would have to be appropriated, we would have to somehow start calling emergency meetings during summer break then. Because if we're gonna say you can't spend it until we tell you, you know, I almost think what the chairman's saying is we get them in here Monday and pin them down and to, especially if what you're thinking is certain, like public safety being a specific thing, I think we pin them down and put it in the budget. You know, I'm just saying that, that's just my thoughts. I'm gonna be fine with whatever, but I do think we do put them in somewhat of a situation if something comes up, unless we're all gonna pull together and have emergency meetings. You know, we would be stopping them from spending this the whole time we're out of session.
Here, let me just back up for a second. You know, from a longer-term perspective, I see, this is just a one-shot deal, but what I'm saying is, long-term, if that was the ordinance on the allocation of the asset forfeiture,
That'll be introduced.
okay, then it goes hand in hand.
Agreed.
Okay, this year, they've got 629, I mean, it's a big number, in the scheme of things on their budget, is not that big of a number. We have 8 minutes, so,
So we should vote on this amendment.
what's that?
So we should vote on this amendment.
Then make your motion.
I make a motion that we adopt Amendment B1.
Second.
It's been moved and second that we adopt Amendment B1, Mr. Clerk.
I
call
have
the
a
roll.
question on.
Oh, I'm sorry.
On the motion. Okay, so is your intent to do this as a standard or just on this budget? Because this would be just on this budget.
Correct. So the first step is for this budget to introduce this amendment to this bill, and then we are introducing a actual bill to do it moving forward. Pretty much the same language.
Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Kennedy?
Aye.
Alderman French?
Aye.
Alderman Vaquero?
Pass.
Alderman Carter?
Aye.
Alderman Conway?
No.
Alderman Vaquero?
It's gonna pass anyway, so yes. So aye.
So, yeah, aye.
Aye.
4 ayes and 1 no.
All right, so then now I will move that we pass out of committee Board Bill number 1 as adjusted by the Board of E&A.
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded that we pass Board Bill number 1 as amended in the E&A version out of committee with a do pass recommendation.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll. No.
Alderman Kennedy?
Aye.
Alderman French?
Aye.
Alderman Vaquero?
Aye.
Alderman Carter?
Aye.
Chairman Conway?
Aye.
We have 5 ayes and 0 noes.
Thank you.
Five ayes.
Meeting adjourned.